The sky over Winterfell was heavy with dark clouds when Arya Stark returned home. She had traveled far and seen death in many faces. But something still pulled her back, something unfinished. Her brother Jon Snow was already there, standing by the godswood tree, lost in thoughts deeper than the snow under his boots. And her father, Lord Eddard Stark, the man she thought long dead, stood in the shadows, older and marked by pain, yet alive. It had all changed. Bran's powers had shown them a truth buried in time, one moment in King's Landing that could shift everything. It was the day the Mad Queen Daenerys Targaryen burned the city. A moment where Arya nearly died under falling stones, where Jon killed the woman he once loved, and where Ned Stark was long gone, beheaded years before it even happened. But what if they could change it? Bran, now the king, had unlocked a path few could understand. Using his powers as the three-eyed raven, he found a way to send their minds back into their own bodies, days before King's Landing was destroyed. It was a one-time chance. No one else would remember the future but them. And they wouldn't be able to return. If they failed, they'd die with the rest. If they succeeded, they could change everything. Arya didn't blink. "I'm ready," she said. Jon looked at her, torn between duty and the weight of what he'd already done. He had killed Daenerys. It haunted him. "If we do this, we may not make it out alive," he warned. "I already died once," Ned said softly. "I'd rather die again doing something right," so the three of them agreed. That night, under the moonlight in the godswood, they took Bran's hand and the world shifted. When Arya opened her eyes, she was riding through the ashes of King's Landing. But this time, it was before the fire. The people were still alive. The bells hadn't rung. She touched her face, confused for a second, then smiled. It worked. Jon awoke in the Red Keep, in his old chambers. Ghost was at his side, wagging his tail like nothing had happened. But Jon remembered it all, Daenerys' face, full of fire and madness, her voice echoing in the throne room as she declared herself the liberator. He remembered her dying in his arms. Ned opened his eyes in a dark cell beneath the Red Keep. He was alive, but still a prisoner, just as he had been years ago before his execution. This was before his death, before the war that tore Westeros apart. But now, he had knowledge of what was to come, and he had no time to waste. Arya quickly made her way through the city, trying to reach the Red Keep. She knew what would happen, the fire, the deaths, the children screaming. She needed to warn Jon, but more importantly, she needed to find her father. Jon knew what Daenerys planned. She had spoken to him about justice, about breaking the wheel, but in her eyes was something darker. He walked through the halls, whispering to loyal guards, gathering men who hadn't yet been taken by her charm. He needed to act before she gave the order to burn the city. Ned, in the cell, banged on the bars until a young squire passed by. "I am Eddard Stark. Tell Seer Davos. Tell anyone. I know the future. King's Landing will burn if she isn't stopped." The squire laughed at first, but something in Ned's eyes, something old, broken, and full of truth made him stop. Arya was near the gates when she saw smoke in the distance. Not dragon fire yet, but tension. The Unsullied had started pushing the people into the streets. Daenerys was preparing the city for her final judgment. Arya ran faster. The clock was ticking. Jon finally reached Tyrion. "She's going to do it again," he said. Tyrion looked at him, confused. "Do what?" "Burn the city. Kill them all." "But how do you know?" "I just do." "We have to stop her now." Just as he said that, Arya entered the room, breathless. "We don't have much time." And then Jon's eyes met hers, and in that look, they both knew. The future could be changed. But only if they were willing to do what must be done. Arya slammed the door behind her, eyes scanning the room quickly. "Where's Daenerys now?" she asked, pulling her dagger from her belt. Tyrion stood frozen. He looked from Arya to Jon. "What is going on?" he demanded. Jon stepped closer. "There's no time to explain. She plans to burn the city. Not just the Red Keep, the whole city. Women, children, innocents." Tyrion's face twisted with disbelief. "She promised mercy. She promised liberation," Arya said coldly. "And that's exactly what she gives, fire and death. I saw the bodies. I walked over them. Their eyes open, mouths still screaming." Jon clenched his jaw. "We have to stop her before she mounts Drogon." Just then, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Grey Worm. Arya vanished into the shadows, like a ghost. Jon and Tyrion stood tall as the Unsullied commander entered. She has summoned you, Grey Worm said to Jon. The queen wishes to speak before the bells ring. The bells? Jon asked. She will ring them to mark her reign. Then comes the cleansing, Tyrion paled. He understood now. Cleansing. That meant fire. As Grey Worm turned to leave, Arya silently followed him through the shadows. She needed to know where Daenerys was. Maybe she could stop this on her own, slit the queen's throat before her dragon ever took flight. Meanwhile, Ned Stark was dragged from his cell by 2 guards and thrown at Ser Davos's feet. This one claims to be Eddard Stark, the guard scoffed. Mad, probably. Davos squinted. The man in chains was older than he remembered, his beard more gray, his eyes sad but sharp. Leave us, Davos said. Once alone, he looked at Ned. You're dead. I saw your head on a spike. Ned nodded. And yet here I stand. Listen to me, Ser Davos. I don't have time to explain the magic. But I come from a future where King's Landing burns. Your queen kills thousands. My son Jon Snow, he will do what's needed. But he needs help. Now. Davos didn't trust easily, but there was something in Ned's eyes. Truth, desperation, and a calm strength that couldn't be faked. He handed him a dagger. Come on, then. Let's go save a city. Back at the Red Keep, Jon approached Daenerys in the Great Hall. She stood beside the Iron Throne, running her fingers along its blades. Drogon rested outside, wings spread like a shadow waiting to fall. She smiled at Jon, eyes alight with fire. It's beautiful, isn't it? She said softly. Jon's heart twisted. He saw her as she was before, kind, fierce, a breaker of chains. But now, she looked like someone else. Someone drunk on destiny. It is, he said carefully. But not if it costs everything. She stepped closer. They will never love me, not as they love you, but they will fear me. And that will be enough. The people don't need fear. They need peace. Peace is a lie, she hissed. Peace never lasted. Not with Robert, not with your so-called honor. Fear is forever. Jon's hand inched toward his sword. You don't have to do this. You think you can stop me? Her voice rose. I have dragons. I have armies. I am the last Targaryen. No, came a voice behind her. Arya stepped from the shadows, blade in hand. You're the last tyrant. Daenerys spun, shock flashing across her face. Assassin, she spat. You think you can sneak up on me again? Arya grinned. I wasn't sneaking. I was waiting. Drogon roared outside. The air turned hot, walls shaking with his fury. But Jon held his ground, standing between the 2 women. Enough, he said. There's still time. Call off the attack. Ring the bells for peace. Daenerys' eyes burned. You'd betray me? After all we've done? I've seen the end of this story, Jon said. And it ends in ashes. She stepped back, her face hardening. Then let it burn. Before she could speak another word, Arya charged, but Daenerys was faster than she looked. She raised her arm, signaling Drogon. The beast let out a monstrous cry and the hall began to quake. And just as flames were about to pour through the windows, the doors burst open. Ned Stark entered, sword drawn. Daenerys froze. What trick is this? Jon stared. He hadn't seen his father in years. Father? Ned looked straight at Daenerys. You want to rule the 7 kingdoms? Then act like a queen. Stop this madness before you're remembered as the last monster, not the last dragon. But Daenerys wasn't moved by words. She raised her hand again. And then the bells began to ring. Far off in the city, the bells of surrender rang loud and clear. Someone had acted. Someone had declared peace. Daenerys' face turned white with rage. And the true battle was about to begin. The ringing of the bells echoed through King's Landing like a final breath before silence. The city heard it, the sign of surrender. Women clutched their children. Men dropped their swords. And for a brief, fragile moment, hope returned. But not in Daenerys. Her eyes twitched. Her lips curled in rage. The sound of the bells, meant to bring peace, felt like mockery to her. Like weakness. She stepped past Jon, past Arya, her fists clenched tight. They think they can silence me with bells? She whispered, her voice shaking. Arya moved to block her path again. It's over, Daenerys. The city has surrendered. Walk away. But the queen didn't stop. Outside, Drogon's roar cut the air like a blade, sensing his mother's fury. The dragon moved toward the Red Keep's tower, wings casting darkness over the courtyard. Inside the hall, Jon reached for Daenerys' arm. Don't do this. If you give the order now, you'll become the very thing you swore to destroy. Daenerys turned slowly, her voice soft but dangerous. I'm not like them. I'm fire and blood. This is the only way the world learns. Arya's grip on her blade tightened. But before Arya could act, a loud voice came from the shattered entrance of the throne room. Tyrion stood there, holding a scroll high in his hand. I have something you might want to see, he said grimly. Everyone turned. Tyrion walked slowly toward the center, dropping the scroll at Daenerys' feet. Jon picked it up, scanned it, and looked stunned. It was proof. Proof of what Bran had sent back with them. A record of Daenerys' order to torch King's Landing before any resistance. A message she had written to Grey Worm and her commanders. If that scroll was made public, she wouldn't be seen as a liberator but as a tyrant with a plan to commit mass murder. Daenerys' eyes darkened when she realized what it was. You betrayed me, Tyrion, she said with venom. He didn't deny it. I saved a city. You wanted obedience, not loyalty. She stepped forward, ready to give the final command. Dragon! She screamed. Outside, Dragon shrieked and began moving toward the Red Keep's heart. But before he could reach it, a flash of steel cut the tension. Arya moved like lightning. Her blade sliced across Daenerys' leg, forcing her to fall. But Arya didn't kill her, not yet. Jon stood frozen. He had already killed Daenerys once in the future. He didn't want to become that man again. Daenerys hit the floor, groaning in pain. Arya stood over her, dagger ready. Then heavy footsteps approached. Ned Stark walked in, his presence calm but powerful. He looked at the fallen queen, then at Jon and Arya. We are not murderers, he said. We do not kill a person who has surrendered, even if they wouldn't give us the same mercy. Arya frowned. She wouldn't have spared us. You saw her. Yes, Ned replied. But if we act like her, then we are her. Tyrion nodded. Let the people decide her fate. Put her on trial. The truth is enough. Outside, Davos had taken control of the gates with loyal men. Grey Worm tried to resist, but found himself surrounded by Northmen and Stormlanders. The war was slipping out of Daenerys' hands. Back in the throne room, Daenerys looked up at Jon with fury and heartbreak. You were supposed to be mine. We were going to change the world together. Jon knelt beside her. We still can, but not with fire. Guards stormed in and took her away. Drogon roared once more, but this time he didn't attack. He circled the sky above the Red Keep, confused, angry, but without command. The sun broke through the clouds over King's Landing. For the first time in days, the air smelled like something other than ash and blood. But peace wasn't won yet. Arya turned to Jon. She won't stay quiet, you know that. Even in chains, she's dangerous. Jon nodded. That's why we need to end it the right way. Not with a sword, but with the truth. And so the plan began to unfold. They would put Daenerys on trial in front of all the lords of Westeros, but many of them still believed in her, and some would kill to see her free. The news of Daenerys Targaryen's arrest spread through King's Landing like wildfire. People couldn't believe it. The Dragon Queen, captured in her own throne room. Some wept, some cheered, and others feared what would come next. Jon Snow stood on the balcony of the Red Keep, looking out over the city. Smoke still rose from scattered fires, but for the first time, there was no dragon flying overhead. Drogon had vanished into the clouds after his mother was taken. No one knew where he went, and that silence was more terrifying than his roar. Inside, the Great Hall was being prepared for something Westeros had never seen, a trial of a queen. Arya sat sharpening her blade, watching the guards hustle around nervously. You really think they'll convict her? She asked Tyrion, who was pacing with worry. Tyrion sighed. If it were up to me, she'd never see the light of day again. But the lords of Westeros, many of them still see her as a savior. Especially those who only heard stories, not the screams. And if they let her go? Arya asked coldly. Then we'll have a new war. Far away in the deepest cell of the Red Keep, Daenerys sat in chains. Her hair was loose, her dress torn. Yet her eyes still burned with the fire of a queen. Ned Stark stood in front of her cell door, silently watching her. You think you've won? She said, her voice low but steady. You think chaining me makes you better? Ned didn't answer right away. Then he said, No, I think doing what's right makes me better. And that's why you're still alive. She laughed bitterly. You think I burned those people for power? I did it because it was the only way to break the wheel. No more lords, no more chains. I gave them freedom, you gave them ashes. You wouldn't understand. You're still trapped in your old code's honor, loyalty. That's not how the world works anymore. Ned looked at her with deep sadness. Then I pray you're wrong. Because if you're right, none of us deserve to rule. Outside, the lords and ladies of Westeros began to arrive. Sansa Stark from the north. Yara Greyjoy from the Iron Islands. Gendry, now Lord of Storm's End. Samwell Tarly, soft-spoken but wise. Even Brienne of Tarth stood as a knight among lords. Bran did not attend in person, but sent a raven with a message of warning. The future depends on the choice you make today. Choose wrong, and the fire returns stronger than before. The trial began at dawn. Daenerys was brought forward, her chains gone, but guarded closely. She held her head high, unshaken. Jon sat among the council, but did not speak yet. He wore black, no sigils, no crown. Tyrion stood to speak first. She is not mad, he began. She's not the Mad King's daughter, she's worse. Because she truly believes what she did was good. Murmurs filled the hall. Tyrion continued, I followed her, I believed in her. And I watched her burn thousands alive. Children, mothers, old men begging for mercy. Not because they fought her, but because they surrendered. Daenerys interrupted, voice sharp. And what would you have done? Let Cersei rule again? Let injustice live another day? No, Tyrion said. But I would not have slaughtered a city to prove a point. Then Jon stood. All eyes turned to him. I loved her, he said quietly. I trusted her. And I saw what power did to her. If we let her go today, she will rise again. She will fly again. And next time, she won't stop at King's Landing. Daenerys stepped forward. Let them decide then. Let the people decide. Ask the ones I freed in Meereen and Astaper. Ask the slaves I saved. Sansa rose from her seat. You didn't save these people. You burned them. The hall erupted into whispers. The vote was about to begin. One by one, the lords gave their word. Some stood for justice. Some stood for mercy. And then, Yara Greyjoy stepped forward. She gave me back my brother. She gave me my kingdom. I stand with her. Gendry shook his head. She gave me a title but not peace. I say guilty. Voices clashed. The hall turned chaotic. And just as things began to spiral, Arya walked calmly to the center. I saw the city burn, she said. I saw a mother holding her baby, both turn to ash. And if you free her today, that fire will return. I swear it. Daenerys looked at Arya with something like hate. Then Ned stood slowly and gave his final words. Power isn't what makes a queen. Mercy does. Justice does. If we reward fire with silence, then we tell the world that the throne is more important than the people sitting beneath it. And then, the final vote was cast. The verdict? Guilty. But the punishment? That was a whole new battle waiting to begin. The word guilty rang louder than any bell ever could. It wasn't shouted. It was whispered by the lords, one after the other, like a prayer they were too afraid to say out loud. Yet it carried enough weight to crush a kingdom. Daenerys stood silent in the center of the hall, her face unreadable. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared at Jon Snow, the man who once kissed her like salvation, now standing on the side of her punishment. Sansa watched her with cold, sharp eyes. She should be executed, she said. As any tyrant would be. No, Sam Tarly said, raising a hand. We should not answer fire with fire, exile her, strip her of power. Let her live with the shame. Jon looked down. His heart pulled in two directions. Every step he took, every word he spoke, brought him closer to becoming what he feared. Another man with blood on his hands in the name of peace. But Arya wasn't torn at all. She burned children alive, and now you want to exile her? Her voice was quiet but full of steel. If you leave her breathing, she will return. She will never stop. Yara Greyjoy stepped forward again. She burned no Ironburn. My ships still carry her banners. You try to kill her now, you'll have war with the islands. And we're ready for it, Sansa snapped. The tension turned into a sword at everyone's throat. Westeros was not at peace, it was hanging by a thread. Then Tyrion stood. There is another way, he said. A compromise. One that stops war before it begins. Everyone turned to him, waiting. We give her the same mercy she gave the city. None, Arya muttered. But Tyrion raised his hand. Not execution. Not exile. Imprisonment. A life sentence in the farthest corner of the world. No visitors, no letters, no throne. She be remembered, but never followed again. Sansa frowned. And who guards her? Who ensures she never escapes? Tyrion looked at Jon. You do. Jon's eyes widened. You want me to? You take her far beyond the seas to a place no raven reaches, and you stay with her. Guard her. Watch her. That is your sentence too. Arya stepped forward. No. He's done enough. Why should he suffer for her crimes? Because he let her in, Tyrion said. Because he believed in her. And because the only person who can keep her from turning the world to ash again is the man she once loved. Jon said nothing for a long time. Then slowly he nodded. I'll do it, Daenerys finally spoke, her voice calm but deadly. I will not live in chains. I will not rot in some far land while others rewrite my story. Jon looked at her. It's not your story anymore. Later that night, Arya found Jon alone in the Godswood, his hand resting on Ghost's white fur. She tried to escape, you know, Arya said quietly. I know. And if she does? Jon didn't answer. Arya placed a hand on his shoulder. I could kill her for you. Jon gave a small, sad smile. No, that's not your burden. It's mine. Meanwhile, Ned stood on the battlements with Tyrion, watching the city lights flicker. Did we do the right thing? Ned asked. Tyrion let out a slow breath. We didn't choose justice. We chose peace. Sometimes the two don't walk the same road. A week later, Jon and Daenerys stood on the docks. A single ship waited for them. The sky was gray, the sea restless. Daenerys was silent, dressed in simple clothes, her hands unchained but watched closely. She didn't speak to anyone. Her eyes were cold, distant. Arya hugged Jon before he boarded. You were never meant for the throne, she whispered, but you were always meant to save it. Sansa said nothing. Just a nod one Stark to another. No more words left. Ned stood beside the ship. You're doing this for all of us, Jon. Jon met his father's eyes. Then promise me. You'll keep it all together. I will. As the ship sailed away, Arya turned to Sansa. Do you think we'll ever see him again? Sansa didn't answer. The sea swallowed the ship, carrying Jon and Daenerys into the mist, into exile, into silence. But as Drogon's shadow passed above the clouds, no one knew where he was flying. No one knew if he was truly gone. Or just waiting. Because dragons never forget. And neither do queens. The ship cut through the fog like a ghost on water. Cold wind pressed against Jon Snow's face, his eyes locked on the horizon. Behind him, Daenerys stood at the railing silent, distant, but awake with fire. She hadn't spoken a word since they left King's Landing. Jon didn't trust the silence. They were heading east, beyond the known lands, to a forgotten prison once used by the Valyrians. A place surrounded by jagged rocks, cursed winds, and seas no one dared sail. A place meant for those too dangerous to be killed, too powerful to be free. No throne, no followers, no dragons. At least that was the plan. But something followed them in the skies. Jon had seen it late at night, just once, a shadow circling the ship. No sound, just the rush of wings and the glimmer of red eyes. Drogon hadn't returned to King's Landing. He was hunting, watching, waiting. Down below deck, Daenerys sat on a small wooden bench, staring at the floor. Jon entered, leaning against the doorframe. We'll reach the island in 2 days, he said. She didn't look up. So this is how my story ends? Jon walked forward slowly. No, it's how it changes. Daenerys raised her eyes. They were tired, but not broken. They want me caged like a beast, but you were supposed to understand. You saw what the world was, how cruel, how blind. I did, Jon said, and I still do. But burning it to the ground isn't how we fix it. Her voice cracked. I wanted to give them a better world. You gave them fear. She stood up suddenly, face inches from his. And you think your family will do better, Sansa with her northern pride? Arya with her knives? They won because they're cold enough to survive, not because they were right. Jon didn't argue. He just looked at her, truly looked. You're not the same woman I once loved. She didn't deny it. Neither are you. That night, a storm rose. The sea turned wild. The sky flashed with lightning. And from the highest mast, the lookout screamed, Dragon! Drogon burst through the clouds like thunder made flesh. His wings spread across the sky, flame in his throat. But he didn't attack. He circled the ship, roaring loud enough to split the heavens. The crew panicked, but Jon stood firm, sword at his side. He stepped onto the deck, looking up. "He won't kill us," he said. "Not until she tells him to." Daenerys appeared beside him, hair whipping in the wind. Her eyes locked with Drogon's above. A connection passed between them, ancient, wordless, unbreakable. Then something terrifying happened. Drogon landed on the ship. The wooden deck cracked under his weight. His huge eyes stared at Daenerys. She stepped forward. The guards raised their spears. "Lower them," Jon ordered. "All of them." Daenerys reached out. Her hand touched Drogon's scales. He leaned into her, groaning softly like a grieving child. "I never meant to lose him," she whispered. "I never meant to lose any of it." "You didn't lose him," Jon said. "You lost yourself." She turned to Jon, eyes shining. "I can still fix it." Jon's heart froze. "How?" She didn't answer. Because she didn't have to. That night, Jon locked her below deck. She didn't fight. Not physically. But her eyes said everything. "You're afraid of me now," she whispered as he turned the key. "I'm afraid of what you'll become," Jon said. "If you believe this is over, it's not." Above them, Drogon wailed into the storm. The ship pressed on. But something had shifted. This was an exile. This was a pause. A wound that hadn't bled yet. Back in Westeros, Ned Stark walked through the halls of the Red Keep, now quiet, clean, and ruled by peace. But he felt uneasy. The people smiled, but in their eyes there was doubt. Sansa ruled the north. Gendry kept Storm's End. Arya had vanished again, heading west, as she always wanted. But something still felt unfinished. One raven arrived at dawn. From a distant port, 4 words written in a trembling hand. "She speaks to him." Ned dropped the letter. Because he knew exactly who she was, and he feared what would happen. If Jon started listening, the prison island appeared like a jagged tooth rising from the sea. No greenery, no birds, just rock, wind, and crashing waves. No ship had docked there in decades. This was where the old Valyrians buried their shame-mad kings, cursed mages, monsters too dangerous to kill. And now it would hold a queen. Jon stepped off the boat first, boots hitting cold stone. Behind him, Daenerys followed, wrapped in a thick cloak, chains no longer on her wrists, but present in every step she took. The silence between them had grown heavy. Drogon was gone again, vanished into the clouds after following the ship the whole way, still watching from above, perhaps waiting for her command. But she hadn't given it. Not yet. The guards built a stone hut at the center of the island, a room with no windows, just a single door and a view of the sea. Inside, there was nothing but a chair, a bed, and a fire pit. That would be her world now. Jon stood in the doorway after locking it from the outside. She sat quietly, staring at the flame. He finally spoke. "I'll stay." "I promised I would." She didn't look at him. "You think this is over?" "I hope so." She turned her head, finally meeting his eyes. "You're wrong." Jon swallowed hard. "What are you planning?" "I'm not planning anything," she said, "but the world is." "You think they'll leave me here forever? You think no one will come?" He stepped closer. "They won't. They're afraid of what you'll do if you ever return." "And they should be," she said, voice calm. Jon clenched his jaw. "If you try to escape, you'll kill me?" She tilted her head. "Will you kill me again, Jon Snow?" He said nothing. But they both remembered how it felt, the blade, the blood, the betrayal. Every night after that, Jon sat outside the hut, sword across his knees, listening to the wind howl through the rocks. Days passed, then weeks. She didn't speak again, not until the raven came. One cold morning, Jon woke to the sound of wings. A black feathered raven perched on the post beside him, a scroll tied to its leg. He read it once, then twice, and his blood ran cold. Drogon has been seen above Essos, villages burned. Cities warned. She speaks through fire. Jon burst into the hut. "What did you do?" Daenerys looked up from her fire, smiling slightly. "Nothing. Don't lie to me. I didn't leave. I didn't speak. I didn't command. But dragons don't need words, Jon. They just need grief." Jon stared at her in horror. "You're controlling him. I'm reminding him. What they did to his mother. What they did to me. And now he remembers." Jon turned away, pacing the stone floor, his hands shaking. "You're going to start another war." "I'm not doing anything," she said. "But they'll blame me anyway. And when they come for me, Drogon will come too. You're going to let thousands die just to prove you're still dangerous?" "I'm not proving anything. I am dangerous." Jon sat heavily on the floor. I thought I thought we could live with this. I thought you would change. She leaned forward. I did change. I became the woman this world forced me to be. And you, her voice softened, you became my jailer. Just like them. He looked at her with pain in his eyes. I didn't want this. I still don't. Then free me, she whispered. And I swear, I'll burn only those who deserve it. Jon stood slowly. The wind outside grew stronger. He stepped toward her, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. I already freed you once, he said. And the world paid the price. Then he turned, walked outside, and locked the door behind him. Hours passed. That night the wind turned warm, too warm. A low, familiar roar echoed through the cliffs. The sea boiled, and the sky turned orange. Drogon was coming. Jon stood on the cliffside, sword in hand, staring into the flames rising from the horizon. He had made his choice. He would not kill her again, but he would not let her burn the world either. As Drogon's shadow covered the island, Jon raised his voice toward the sky. If you want her, take me first. The dragon hovered. And then, it roared one long, heart-shaking sound of pain and rage and vanished back into the clouds. Back in her stone prison, Daenerys collapsed onto the floor, her body shaking, her fire gone. She realized then, even her dragons couldn't save her from what she had become. And Jon finally understood the cost of mercy, not death, not fire, but choosing to live with what should have been stopped long ago. And that was the final war he would fight. Every day for the rest of his life.